Accelerating, we hear parents and coaches all of a sudden, you got to lean more, lean forward. Well,
Fall,
you
roll forward.
roll forward. And I'm like, well, if they don't push hard enough, that just basically becomes a stumble. I have some athletes when they accelerate, they're kind of upright, but that's where they currently are. And I'm okay with that until I get them stronger and they can push the earth away from them. They're going to stay a little higher, but then as they get stronger, they start to naturally lean, not because of you and I telling them to, but because their body now knows, gosh, I got all this force and I have to get in front of that force. And that's what allows me to lean and push.
Lee Taft, welcome back to the Strong Female Athlete podcast.
Erica, thank you so much, man. I've been looking forward to this. I'm so glad you reached out. And it's funny, we're actually not that far apart from each other where we live, but we just never get a chance to connect. So this is fun. This is fun for me.
Yeah, you're a fellow like northerner who came to Florida. I think we came here at the same time, maybe
Pretty
like
close. Yeah.
2020 or 2021. When did you get down
We
here?
were the very end of 2019. We came down, and then I can remember
Okay.
you came, yeah, pretty quick, after that. And we were originally in a place called Nokomis, which is kind of Venice area, and then we found a place a little bit south, which is called Northport, and that's where we're at now.
Okay. Yeah, I was a year behind you. I came end of 2020, early
20, okay,
2021. So
yeah.
yeah, now we're really close. And I'm actually curious, what do you think about the training and sports scene in Florida? Because I always say it's a little bit of the wild, wild west down here. Do you agree?
That's the exact wording we use all the time. I currently coach high school basketball, and I coach against several teams that have coaches that have come down from the north. Actually, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, and I'm a New Yorker, and I coach in Indiana. And we all are the same thing. It's like the wild, wild west. You just rules are almost an optional, uh, an optional thing. They're not actually abided by a lot. For example, we don't have a conference. I always grew up as a player and as a coach in the North. You had a conference. So if you had six, seven teams, you played them twice. So you have 12 to 14 games done. And then you schedule maybe a tournament or two and a couple other games. Here, every single year, you just schedule whoever you want. Erica, the other day, I had a team call me up and say, no, we're not going to play you this year. We found a better team. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not offended by that. Thank you, though. But that's what I mean. That would never happen up north because you have contracts and it's just really, really different. And even the approach of, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later about maybe travel sports or whatever is very, very different with how it actually trumps their school sport, and kids will miss a school sport game to go do a travel sport practice. And it just blows my mind. So yeah, those are we could go for days on those topics.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Every coach I know who has moved down here is like, it is so like overwhelming. It's very cutthroat down here with travel
Yes.
sports. And then, like you said, the school season overlapping with the travel season across most sports down here.
Yeah.
It's really concerning. And I see a lot of girls just kind of fall apart during that time because it's just too much and there's really no recovery within that. And then they might discontinue their strength training and then they just wither away. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really hard down here. And I don't know if you found this too as a performance coach, but a lot of parents are like trying to find good performance training. And some of the parents of the girls I work with say to me, yeah, you're kind of preaching a message that no one else is really talking about down here. And they're shocked with what I'm saying. I'm like, well, that's concerning.
Yeah.
Have you found that too?
100% all the time. I will get referred by another parent, and I'll have a parent bring their daughter to me, and we'll talk about what you and I would consider foundational uh, just basic premise that we need to be able to do to help an athlete develop foundational skills. And it's like you just told them the secret to life. They're amazed by it. I talk even about rest and recovery and why it's important to be able to value that and to schedule that. And they're like, we never really thought of that. We just think, they get in better shape if they do more. I said, well, that's not necessarily true. You don't always get in shape when you're doing more and more. Sometimes you got to do your work and then you got to recover and let the body actually adapt to what you just did. And I said, that's actually how you get in shape. And they're like, that's not what their coaches are telling them. I said, well, of course not. Their coaches don't know, first of all. And some of them mean well, but they just don't know. I mean, they don't have an understanding. So it's, you use the right wording. It's concerning. It really is because I have found of the multiple athletes I have right now, every single one of them is recovering from an injury, a major injury as well, from Achilles to ACLs. I had a young man who had a Tommy John
Oh
surgery, and
gosh.
and every one of them is traced back to overuse
Yep.
and poor training, poor strength, and unfortunately, that's the life we're dealing with now. And it never used to be that way when I first was in it. This is my 36th year. And so I see things come kind of full circle now, but it's amazing, yeah, what you're going to fight.
That's really interesting when you talk about some of those more catastrophic injuries like your Tommy Johns, your ACL tears. People don't often think, oh, this could also be an overuse injury in a way due to fatigue. A lot of people are like, oh, it was their mechanics and knee valgus. And then everyone else ignores the fact, oh, well, maybe it's because they were training 6 to 7 days a week with
That's
no
right.
recovery. Then come game time, they take a weird plant because they're fatigued and their muscles can't contract at the right time. So,
Exactly. 100%. And we have to get parents to understand and athletes, fatigue isn't just lack of breath at the moment or feeling a little bit groggy in the morning. Okay, that is an aspect of fatigue, but that's not what we're talking about when it usually comes to one of these um, acute, quick injuries that just shouldn't have happened. Like you should have been able to plant your foot, change directions without skipping a beat. But we're seeing. The other day, Erica, I saw this video of a lacrosse woman playing. Just a simple avoidance step. It'd be like me running at you, and I just took maybe a 10-degree cut. She had a slight shoulder tilt towards the plant foot.
mm,
The plant foot was externally rotated. She hit it and immediately went down. And I'm like, that shouldn't happen.
yeah.
So probably in the fatigue that most parents don't even think about is CNS fatigue, the ability to, like you said, for the muscle or the nervous system to contract or co-contract at the correct time. And oftentimes this should happen subconsciously because we know when our foot's going to hit the ground, so the body preps for that. But when we have CNS fatigue, sometimes that doesn't occur, and then next you got this silly injury that should have never happened. So yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think a lot of people don't understand the central nervous system aspect to this. And yeah, a shoulder lean towards the plant foot it's so sketchy. It really should not be happening. And you're a huge expert in the field of just human movement. And I remember taking your I think it was your certified speed and agility coach course
Mm,
years ago. And I learned so much about teaching deceleration and motor learning and actually walking athletes through these movements and then moving on to more chaotic settings and getting them used to these patterns and then just the importance of the strength piece too.
yeah.
And with something like an outside shoulder lean, is that also a core stability issue or like hip strength? How can strength play into these inefficient change of direction patterns?
Yeah, of course. When I think one thing that as a profession, we've done a better job of is we talk about movement over just muscle. But we know, obviously, muscles in specific areas are going to contract and they're going to relax at certain times to be able to make an efficiency or a coordinated pattern occur. But if an athlete lacks a well-coordinated strength, and that has to do with not only maximal or absolute or submaximal strengths, but it also has to do with, kind of the coordinated strength or rate coding or things that allow us to move really quick and efficient, and it looks easy. That's really what we're after. That's the coordination. So when an athlete lacks the ability to quickly absorb and then release that energy, which we'll call strength and or power, um, they tend to biomechanically get into a bad position. And it's really no different than performing a sports skill. If you're doing a free kick or a goal kick and you're kicking with your right leg and you're planting with your left, and your plant looks very similar to a high jumper approaching. That foot plants out in front to be able to kind of decelerate your body and let that backside leg come swinging through. Well, if you don't have the strength, a couple things are going to occur. Number one, you're going to change um, the actual skill, what it looks like. You're going to change the mechanics because you're not strong enough to maybe load into that lead leg and allow that backside leg to come through. Or you're going to incur some kind of it could be a nagging, it could be an acute injury or a continued chronic injury, maybe a patellar tendonitis, maybe a hip injury, labrum, or something of that nature from overuse because you just can't stabilize. So simple, basic strength is critical so that athletes can cut, they can perform their skill like kicking a ball or diving to save a kick on goal, or to jump to get a rebound in basketball, or simply just to play in practice and to go through normal patterns. So yeah, strength is that's kind of the foundation of everything. And I think you and I will probably talk about some acceleration and different movements and things of that. But can you imagine not having the strength to be able to move your body mass? So it really is the foundation of everything we're going to talk about and that we do as coaches.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that strength piece is so important. And I had Mike Boyle on the other day, and he said it's the one piece where we are royally lacking, especially in female athletes. And I think it was Carmen Bott who she said that a deceleration happens at it's like 2 to 5 times body weight. Is that about right?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
absolutely.
Then
Yeah.
yeah, everyone, come on, we need to get strength training. It's so important. And I really want your opinion on this. So I think a lot of sports parents, they watch their athlete play a game and maybe they're looking quote unquote unfit or
Yeah.
they're slow to the ball. And then they're like, okay, we need to get them more endurance training. We need to get them fitter. We need to do more. And then it becomes this like hamster wheel of they continue to still do bad in the game. And then the parents like, no, we need to keep doing more. And the kid doesn't get better. And my question is it an unfit problem or is it lack of strength and that foundational development?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny when I get an email or a text or a inquiry about my training, what we can do. Their initial point to me is my kid's just unfit.
Mm,
They can't last. And if they're unfit, okay, that's part of it, obviously. You can't be an unfit athlete and be real successful long term. But most of the time, it's what you're saying. It's a lack of strength. It's a lack of movement, speed, and quality of movement. I don't, in most of our sports, like I don't have to be the fastest in the 40 or maybe 100 meters if we're stretching it out a little bit to be the best mover on the field because I can be really efficient. So if we tag these areas of strength, which if I'm doing my strength training correctly, now I do decelerate better, which allows me to move somewhere else, which I like to say we escape space
mm,
and we attack new space, Well, if I'm stronger, so it's easier for me to move my body mass, like Carmen was saying, you know, maybe it's 3 to 5 times or 2 to 5 times my body weight. Well, if I can manage that relatively easy, I look efficient and I look fit and I look like I'm moving really well. Because as like Tony Holler would always preach, if if I'm a faster athlete, well, most sports, I don't actually run at my maximal speed. I run sub-maximal. So if I'm really fast, but in the game I run at 75 to 80% of my maximal speed, well, that's easy for me. But if another athlete's maximal speed is my sub-maximal and they're trying to hang with me all game, well, they're going to appear unfit.
Mm,
But really, it's just they're unfast.
yeah.
They're just not quick. They're not fast enough, so they can't move. So certainly, we have to be cardiovascularly fit. That's just a health benefit. But if I can move well and I have the requisite strength to be able to manage mass and momentum or just to be able to change my inertia, man, what a benefit. What a bonus that is for an athlete. And then it appears like they're even more fit. And really they're just more efficient movers because they're strong and they're fast.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And yeah, it always is so crazy when parents don't think their kid is fit. It's like, well, I mean, you guys practice 3 to 4 days a week. You have
Yeah,
4 game tournament weekends. Unless you are standing around for all of this,
that's
then you
right.
don't have the aerobic endurance. But I don't think people are standing around here.
No, yeah, exactly.
It's so crazy. Now let's talk about acceleration. When I took your course, I just loved how you broke down acceleration and for us coaches how to teach it and just what to look for. What are some of your biggest tips for improving acceleration? And for the sports parents listening, a lot of them say explosive first step. That's what
Yeah, yeah.
everyone always asks about. How do I get a more explosive first step? So let's dive into acceleration.
Hey guys, just want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, Simply Faster, and one of my favorite speed timing systems from them, the Free Lap. I use it for my own sprint training as well as for my athletes, and they love it. It's super easy to set up, you can take it to the field on your own, and you can get accurate speed times to track your progress. Check the Free Lap link in the caption below to start adding timing into your speed sessions. If you know me, you know I love my Free Lap. If you're serious about speed, it's time to start timing.
Yeah, great. Love this topic. So, really, again, goes back to what we've been talking about. The more strength I have, the ability to move my body. If I'm a 135-pound athlete, well, if I don't have the strength that can handle 135 pounds easily, well, it's just going to take me longer to move through space. Right? But if I have the strength of an athlete that's, maybe 195 or 225 pounds, well, gosh, I can move 135 really easy because that's just relative strength. I have that ability. So first of all, let's continue to get stronger. And moms and dads and grandparents and those of you who are supporting your kids, be patient
Mm,
because their teammate is really quick and natural. That might just be a genetic gift they have. Be patient with your kids and allow strength to take place. And that's one of the variables. It takes you and I longer to get them better. Like we might be able to get them mobile a little bit quicker. We might be able to get their technique a little bit quicker, but strength takes time. So just that's a side note. You got to give them time to do that. But once we have that, acceleration is about, this is kind of cool. And if you think of it this way, if I'm applying force vertically to jump and to get up in the air, that's the same force I want to move horizontally.
mm,
If we tipped the earth in my direction of travel, it's still vertical propulsion. I'm just now leaning in a horizontal pattern. So it's still pushing vertically. It's just now I'm leaning differently, but my ankle going into plantar flexion, my knee extension, my hip extension, my spinal extension, potentially. All that stuff is happening really in this vertical path. I'm just tilted now because I was standing still, but now I have to get going. Acceleration, this is the cool part about it. Accelerating, we hear parents and coaches all of a sudden, you got to lean more, lean forward. Well,
Fall,
you
roll forward.
roll forward. And I'm like, well, if they don't push hard enough, that just basically becomes a stumble. So I have some athletes when they accelerate, they're kind of upright, but that's where they currently are. And I'm okay with that until I get them stronger and they can push the earth away from them. They're going to stay a little higher, but then as they get stronger, they start to naturally lean, not because of you and I telling them to, but because their body now knows, gosh, I got all this force, and I have to get in front of that force. So if my body's in front of it, it'd be like having a big engine behind me. If I'm not lined up straight in line with that, it's just going to kind of spin me away. So we kind of get behind that or in front of it, and that's what allows me to lean and push. The other part that parents have to understand is stop telling athletes to move their feet really fast on
Mm.
the first couple steps. Well, they didn't afford them the opportunity to actually push through space. We have to, Dan Paff, Charlie Francis, a lot of these old time coaches used to say, and still Dan still says, is be patient. Like acceleration is about being patient, and then you'll pick up your speed as you go. So when we talk with our athletes, we're like, take as long of a stride as you possibly can without overstriding. So a great drill to kind of understand that would be the difference between a power skip and an A skip. An A skip is very quick, very snappy, very vertical, as where a power skip is very long and I get my body over the foot, then I get it in front, then I project up and out, kind of like a high jumper. It takes a little bit longer on the ground. That's acceleration. And then the last piece, Erica, which I know you and I actually have talked about this in the past, is in order for my legs to have time to push long enough, my arms have to be coordinated with kind of I like to call it a long arm stroke or an
Mhm.
arm gait. It's just got to be a little longer. And I might tell my athletes, your back arm, when it swings, if we can get your pinky up to the shoulder height behind you, I know you're giving the pushing leg long enough to move your body. And then it switches really quick. So I know that's a lot, but if you visualize it, I think people can understand what I'm trying to say.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, there's so much to unpack there. And I'm glad you addressed some of the misconceptions that sports parents have about acceleration. And I think the biggest one is we want like quick feet. And
Yeah,
it's like, we don't want you to be quick. We want you to be long and
yeah.
strong. And I like that earth tilt example you gave. I think that's just such a good visual of like pushing the ground away and just really propelling forward. Now, I know you're in Florida now, and I get kind of sad about this one, but there's not a lot of hills here.
Oh, I know.
And well, the house I just moved to, we're on a slight hill incline, which I got really excited about because I feel like hills are so good for teaching acceleration. Do you kind of want to go into the physics of that?
Yeah, yeah. And you know what it does, Erica, and you'll find this. It almost takes the cueing
Yeah.
out of your hand. Just get them on a hill, and if they don't pick their toe up, they're going to trip because they now have to step up a little bit because they're going uphill. And the only hill we have right around us is my driveway. It's like, because the homes are built up a little bit, and I got a little bit of a slant on the bottom of my driveway. And it's probably, if I go from bottom to the top, and I might get 8 yards, you know what I mean? Which is okay. That's a pretty good distance to get some decent acceleration. And then if I add a band, I can extend that a little bit. But yeah, so the mechanics and the physics behind it is if um, if we look at maximal velocity sprinting, visualize in your head, the greatest sprinters running down the track in the Olympics, and sometimes we'll get a slow-mo and we'll get a side view. And we notice this leg comes off the ground and then it collapses at the knee and at the hip, and the other leg posts into the ground or it touches down and it looks like a four. That's why we say, hey, we want to kind of hit this figure four position. And that does two major things. That straight leg allows us to bounce off the ground to give us time in the air to allow the back leg to cycle through. Well, that leg that's cycling through comes through pretty high up near my butt. My shin gets up and it travels over the plant leg knee, and that looks like a four. It looks like a figure four. Well, that's important for maximal velocity, but I don't want those angles in acceleration. So, from a physics standpoint, in order for me, and you and I just talked about being patient when we push, and that doesn't mean be slow. When people misunderstand that, I don't want slow, long bounding feeling. I
Mhm.
still want the legs to move quick. But when my back leg comes off the ground in acceleration, let's say I'm going up my driveway or your slanted road, and um, my front leg and that shin angle is pushing down and back. So it's trying to move my posture forward. It's trying to move my pelvis and everything forward. The back leg, when it releases from the ground, it has to stay fairly long. Like my hip stays fairly long at the joint, my knee stays fairly long or straight. In other words, I don't want that really big collapsed max velocity figure four position because then I don't get to take advantage of the leverage that that long leg gives me when it comes through low. So in layman's term, I want to see the back foot come over maybe the ankle versus the knee. And here's why. And you had mentioned physics. That longer lever or a moment arm, that longer action allows my pushing leg to push longer. And that's the patient aspect we were talking about. So when I have parents watch and I videotape and I'll show them this is what we're seeing, they're like, yeah, they're not stepping over it. My other coach told me they got to step over. I said, not yet. We don't want them to step over yet. They got to stay low and long. And then, Erica, if we combine that long, low recovery leg, and we're only talking the first couple steps, maybe three steps if you're strong enough, the arms have to be kind of matching that. That's coordination. That's the gait cycle. That's how we coordinate those. So the longer levers allow the pushing leg to do more work versus the short, quick, choppy step, which to your eyes look like, yeah, they're moving really fast. That's great. Like, no, you never allowed them to finish the gait cycle and push. So again, I apologize. I know that's a lot, that's a lot of information. I mean, you and I understand this, but to the listeners, just kind of back this segment up again and listen to what we're talking about here. And that's how you understand the difference between accelerating and using a hill versus flat ground running and max velocity. They're kind of two different patterns.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good breakdown. And hills are just, they're so valuable. And like you said, you don't need to cue too much. And you did have a great post about this the other day. You said the friend of motor learning is time, and then the
Yeah.
enemy is over cueing. And I was like, share. Like, I love that.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that so true though? How if we just if we this is where I think like the travel sport, NIL, gotta play high school sports and middle school sports to go get a scholarship. That speeds up our progressions of where this athlete should be at any given time. I'm a sixth grade young lady getting exposed to soccer or lacrosse or field hockey or maybe volleyball. And all of a sudden, it's like somebody grabs them by the back of their shirt and says, hurry up, hurry up. You got to get ready for a scholarship. So we change how we develop them based on these unfair goals of middle school is college prep now. I'm like, no, it's not. It's middle school sports. Let them develop. So it changes how we coach the biomechanical aspects of something simple as acceleration. we need to be patient, and that's what's happened. I didn't have that when I grew up. It was a different time frame. We didn't even think about college, but now that's what we've done with this youth sports, and that's kind of sad. So you and I are kind of like trying to put reins on them and say, "Whoa, slow down, slow down." So yeah,
Yeah, we're really trying to fight that in Florida here. And it just comes back to like good versus bad coaching. And I've just found here a lot of people lie to parents. They rush the kids' development. They say they can fix this overnight with just, a few sessions here and there. And I'm here to tell people, no, that's not the truth. Development takes time and you really have to stick with it, especially for skills as advanced as acceleration and developing speed. It's just, it takes so much time, especially like you said, with those middle school athletes. They're still learning their bodies, they're still
yeah,
growing, and that's the time period where you really have to work with girls and just like be patient and see that process all the way through. And I know you've worked with a lot of athletes young and you've seen them through that long-term pathway, and it's so rewarding and it's fulfilling to see. And I just urge parents, you have to have your kids stick with it. You're not going to have like Usain Bolt speed in like a 1 month program here.
that's right. That's 100% right. And give like if you take like especially some of these young ladies that are fighting other things besides physical development, they're fighting what they look like while they're training around other teammates, or maybe it's not a teammate. Maybe we're in our setting where we have groups, kids coming from different environments. You just got to give them time to get comfortable, and that takes time. That's an emotional skill. It's a confidence, and so sometimes as where you might get a young lady that's just bold and doesn't care, that's just the way they come in, they walk through the door, like, they come in, and then you get the others who kind of peek around the corner and come in. Well, their development is going to be different, right? We know that because the ability to let yourself go. So, Erica, if you give a girl a half kneeling 10-yard acceleration skill. Well, that's a challenging skill for some. But others, if they have, even if it's challenging, but they just got this bold mentality, they don't care. They don't care if they stumble. They'll be the first ones to laugh at themselves and get up and say, let's do it again. But then you get the other person who doesn't like to get down in a half kneeling because it's uncomfortable. It's going to feel so they just can't quite put the same effort into it. Their training is going to take longer to develop just because they mentally don't allow themselves to express all that goes into real training. You have to be okay with being big and long and open and exposing your body to different positions. And if you're not comfortable with that, then we have to take a different approach and kind of, you know, for lack of a better phrase, kind of hold their hand through the process and say, "You're okay. I'm with you. Okay, we're going to do this together. You're okay." As with the other person, is like, "Get your hand off me. I got this." And that's part of it. That's part of the development.
Yeah. Now, I do want to talk about this whole idea of a false step. Because
Yeah.
I know you were one of the first people I heard talking about this, that this is just a natural thing and it's okay. But I still get female athletes, I still get their parents being like, she takes a quick step back during acceleration. Shouldn't she roll forward and not have this like false step? And I'm like, let me tell you something here. So why don't you explain why it's okay to have that quote unquote false step?
Yeah, gosh, thank you. If you knew in the early years when I started talking about this, even in the later 80s, Erica, the beating I took from
Oh,
football coaches and from soccer coaches and and I'm trying to explain to them, like, I didn't invent, this is not a skill I invented. I'm endorsing it. So I'm building my skill patterns around the fact that I know it's going to happen. So these young ladies you're talking about with parents who are saying, don't step backwards, or maybe they've heard the phrase false step. And really all it is it falls under this family of patterning we call repositioning, because we can reposition behind them, which I started to call a plyo step because it looked plyometric. That
yeah.
this was, back in again in the later 80s, early 90s, I started just giving names to it for me, not for other people. I'm like, okay, that looks like plyometric step. So that's what I named it. And then if I do the same thing, but I go backwards, I call that a hip turn. And it's still the same concept. It's a pattern or an action that you and I really don't have any control over. It's more of a protective fight or flight subconscious pattern that allows us to use, here's this phrase, these words again, to escape space and attack space quickly. And the cool thing with it, and when their parents see their young daughters do this, well, their daughters aren't even thinking about their feet. They're thinking about the task. They're in an environment, maybe a small volleyball court or a big soccer pitch or basketball court, and they're just trying to accomplish a task. And when the body repositions, it's actually giving us an advantage of what we just talked about, acceleration. It's giving us an angle back into the ground behind our center of mass to project us forward. We love the phrase power, but in this case, we really want elastic energy, which is quicker. So if I put my finger on my chest, I do this with my athletes, and I snap my finger down, but then I take that finger and I do that. That's the difference between the plyo step and rolling forward. Which one do you want? And parents are like, oh, yeah, that makes more sense. I said, well, that's the elastic energy that we want. So when the body repositions, it actually usually takes a shorter leg. So think of a defensive stance, whatever sport it is, whatever. We're kind of bending our hips, our knees, and our ankles. We're a little bit lower. All of a sudden, one of the legs straightens out quickly behind us. That projects us forward quickly. That's why sprinters don't squat when they sprint. They stay tall because it's quicker. But when I come out of the blocks or I'm first starting accelerating, typically we see a shorter leg. Well, this athlete using the plyo step or a repositioning step is trying to get the best of both worlds. They're trying to create that angle down and back behind them, but use the benefit of this elasticity. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's what it is. Yeah.
I like that you renamed it from false step to plyo step. It just sounds
Yeah.
more advantageous. And yeah, you
Yeah.
brought up track athletes, and I actually trained for a track meet this past year with Team USA Track and Field for the old people division. But
Yeah. Yeah.
and when I was learning the blocks, I think that was probably the hardest thing to learn because
Yeah.
my back foot was so far back. And then I really had to learn to create that horizontal force. So, is that why track athletes start with that back leg back? Because in field sports, you have to put that back leg back to take that plyo step. So, is
Yeah.
there a relation there?
Sure. Yeah. Because what we're trying to do, so the back leg, even in a plyo step, it isn't the forceful leg. It's the leg that begins shifting my hips forward over the stronger leg. That's what initiates my takeoff. So when an athlete, let's say I'm standing and my right leg goes behind me really quick to go chase a 50-50 ball, and my left leg will kind of shorten in front of me and I'll get a little knee lift. Well, I'm trying to get that quick plyo step or that repositioning step to quickly get me over the front leg. As we're rolling, just takes too long to do that. So in the blocks, the back leg isn't the big, powerful, forceful leg, but it's the one that gets me over that front leg. And then I can pull through, like we talked about, with a lower trail leg to get through. But yeah, absolutely. That's why it's done. The cool thing with track, it's already done for me.
Yeah.
The block, because and the reason is, and this is where, Erica, you and I can help parents understand is a whether it's a 100-meter sprinter in the blocks or an 800-meter runner who would stand up in a staggered stance or a miler, they already know where they're going.
Yeah.
So they don't have to reposition because they can stagger. If in soccer, I knew every time the ball was going there, well, I'm just going to stand facing that way. Why stand straight if I know the ball's going there? But we don't know that. So that's why we stand athletic or bouncing our feet parallel stance, and all of a sudden we have to reposition. So yeah, that's actually a very cool an example of the blocks. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So just to summarize, so with acceleration, first and foremost, make the time to get strong, and then
Yes.
preferably find a performance coach who can teach acceleration or set up the right drills to get the right response with the
Yeah.
mechanics. And then third, embrace the plyo step, everyone. So
Yeah.
is that a good summary? Is there anything else you would add to acceleration?
It sure is. Yeah. And here's the thing. This is all things, not just acceleration. This is what I look at when I evaluate is is what we're seeing, and maybe a low functioning pattern. Is it a strength power issue? Is it a skill acquisition issue? Or is it a mechanical issue? Is it bits and pieces of each? And this is why, if you have an athlete, let's say a 12-year-old young lady who's actually pretty strong, can squat pretty good, can single leg squat, real no problem, but they just don't look quite right. Okay, well, did they have enough time to acquire the skill that you're trying to teach them? Maybe it's that. Or is it a mechanical issue? So those are things we can address, but it could be the other way. They could be not strong enough. And if they gain strength, a lot of times the mechanical issue cleans itself up just because they're strong enough to hit the positions now. So yeah, exactly. That's what acceleration really is. It's any one of those three things. And the cool part about our job is if parents allow us and athletes and they give us time, we can address those. We can fix those. Those are all fixable things. I can't make you 6'2" if your mom and dad are 5'7", right? But I can make you faster if we get the chance to improve it.
Yeah, love it. Now, I do want to shift gears and kind of wrap this up with the return to play side of things. I
Yeah.
know you have been outspoken about this in the past few weeks, and I've seen some complete disasters as well. But with girls getting cleared after ACL rehab when they shouldn't have been, what are some of the things you've been seeing as far as them still having movement deficits or just like these high risk patterns? And you're like, ooh, that's concerning. They got cleared.
Yeah, yeah, it's scary to me. I actually just started helping a couple athletes or college girls that one of them has already had two ACL tears and they're pushing her to get back really quick. So, Erica, just to give the listeners an example of what it means to have a deficit, I did a test and I did a vertical jump test, a bilateral jump. She was 18 inches. Her non-injured leg, she was roughly 13 point something inches, which is pretty good. That's pretty, she's powerful. Her injured leg, now keep in mind, this is months and months later, been fully cleared. Uh, that injured leg was like 8.7. So 18 bilateral, almost 14 on the healthier leg. On the injured leg, still down 18. That's just a recipe for disaster. So when I actually had her do a 18-inch step up, her healthy leg looked great. We do a zone one step up, which just means the toe is behind the heel of the leg on the box. No problem. She got in the other leg, the injured leg, couldn't get up, could not get up onto the box. And you're going to tell me we're going to put her back in a competitive environment where decisions have to be made, and that leg is just going to be loaded unfairly. So we see deficits from measuring, but we can also see it from gait patterns. We see a shorter uh, gait cycle on that side, yet a longer ground contact time on the injured side because they just can't get off it quick enough. We see I shared a post from actually the athlete that I had. This girl was a soccer player. Her skipping when she would skip onto her front leg was her non-injured leg. She absorbed, bent the leg, bent the knee, boom, and then pushed off the other one. She went immediately to a straight leg position because the knee hurt. So she
Oh,
didn't want to bend it. And that right off tells me she's just not ready for it. And I'm doing it in a controlled setting. I can't imagine what's going to happen in a live setting. So yeah, if you have any thoughts on that, but that's definitely what I'm seeing. And I have a girl right now too, college with an Achilles, same thing. And it's scary.
Now, for the ACL girl, how many months of rehab did she have before she came to you?
So she is in over 7 months now.
Wow.
So she has been, and again, there's different, ideally, they're going to say 12 months, right? But we've seen athletes come back much sooner and much later. This young lady who, her first surgery, she went, and this is how she described it to me. She goes, I went to the physical therapist that my grandmother goes to, and it was just there was never any intensity, never a progression. She goes, so I never really did any strength training. I never did anything hard. I was always just doing, straightening my knee out, meaning leg extensions. And so she never had any proper reorganization of coordination, of loading sequencing, of then gradually building into more speed of firing of a muscle. Eventually, we got to get back there if you're going to compete. So she never had that. So she tore it again. And then
Wow.
now she's same thing. When I've gotten her now, again, she's been over 7 months released. Orthopedic surgeon released her. And I'm getting her and I'm saying, no, no, you're not ready, which frustrates them because they're told by this authority up here, orthopedic, yeah, you're good, you're cleared. And I'm like, well, they don't do agility with you. I do.
Yeah.
And I see the reality of this. So yeah, it's kind of scary.
Yeah. It really is scary. And the fact that a lot of these girls don't get those deceleration and change of direction exposures in that PT setting is terrifying because that's how the injury occurred in the first place. So it's like,
Yeah.
guys, like you don't see the connection here. And when you mention to parents, hey, she's not ready, and then the surgeon says otherwise, do you get pushback from the parents or do they understand when you walk them through the process?
Both. I've had some, I've told them, no, this is what my data is showing me. This is what I've seen. This is what, from my assessment, this is what I'm seeing. And some of them, quite frankly, I never saw again. They didn't come back because they were mad. But others were like, gosh, geez, I don't want to do anything to hurt her. And so, what do you suggest, Lee? And then I go through. I said, well, first and foremost, she just doesn't have a strength base. Let's give me time to get a strength base. While we're getting the strength base, yeah, we can be working on movement patterns and deceleration. We can do those collectively. We can do it together, but I just can't do something that is going to have her body momentum and her body mass supersede the strength that she has. But I said, if you trust your coach to do that, you're asking for trouble. And it's not their fault. They just aren't trained in it. That this is what I've been doing, and I study the research and I look at it, and just give me the time. And most of them are like, okay, all right, we'll do that. The athletes are frustrated by that, but that's why, Erica, we have to be good at the art of coaching and make it fun and competitive. I use a system called OVR, which you
Yeah, I
probably are
use that
familiar.
too for return to play. It's so
See,
good. Yeah.
well, they look at that number and you can see them like, ah, son of a gun, I want,
Yeah.
and they want to compete. But we can do that in a closed chain environment or an open chain controlled environment, which gets them back into the competitive juices of getting better versus you and I just say, hey, I'm going to start my clock, give me 30 seconds of an isometric hold, which they hate. But if
Yeah.
you can give them like the OVR velocity-based testing, and it's awesome. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and go into the OVR more because I think I saw somewhere that 30% of ACL patients who re-tear never complete a full plyometric program, which is
Yeah,
very concerning. So how do you
yeah.
use OVR to just like get a better idea of like where your girls are at for returning back to sport?
Exactly. Well, so if I didn't have the athlete prior and I don't know their baseline numbers, I have to get baseline numbers where they are now with the injury. And then sometimes you just got to look at the data and get an idea. We can't always take the standards because people are just different, but it gives us a guideline. So we might say, hey, I would like to see you at least a 16.5-inch vertical jump or a broad jump. I'd like to see you at, 6.5, maybe 7 feet or whatever. And then bilaterally, though, this is where I would like you to see. And when they see their bilateral numbers, excuse me, I meant to say unilateral, bilateral numbers, meaning both legs, that number and then unilateral, non-injured versus injured, that's when they say, oh my gosh, because the numbers don't lie. They see that. Now I can put together a program of maybe step ups, step downs, leaping and landing and holding,
Yeah.
hopping, landing and holding. Now I have permission to do that because they've seen the assessment numbers and it's alarming to them. And because I have another girl who's actually a very good track athlete, strong as an ox. She is like a 270 pound squatter. Girl's really strong. But in basketball, she tore her ACL. She got hit and tore her ACL. So we've been working now quite a bit. Well, when I first tested her, when she saw her non-dominant, her injured leg on the test numbers, she almost turned white. She goes, "Oh
Oh,
my God, I had no idea." She goes, "I didn't feel like it was that bad till she saw it." And then she saw the video of it. I said, "Look at the difference in your sequencing of jumping." And she's pretty smart. She gets it. And so now she's kind of like, whatever I say, she'll follow through. But she's one of these very type A competitive athletes. So I have to protect her competitiveness, and the numbers allow. That's why I like whether it's OVR or any other system. Some people have the fortunate use of a force plate system, which I don't have. All I need to know is I need to get some idea of numbers because it helps me and it helps the athlete. But yeah, definitely, I think that's such a valuable tool.
yeah. I think it's so great you're using those tools. And like you said, it does expose their deficit still, but then it does motivate them to
Yeah,
continue to stick with the program and see the return to play all the way through.
yeah,
And I was talking to a dad of one of my return to play girls the other day, and he was like, she loves doing this because she feels like she's doing a full training program that she never had prior to injury. And we were saying, oh, this is so ironic that she's training harder than her healthy teammates and learning proper training, and she's going to go
yeah.
back better than some of them. And I'm like, I hate that people have to learn the hard way what real training really is. But he's like, look, we're never going to go back to not doing this stuff. We're like, when she goes back, we're going to maintain and we're going to keep doing this and spread the gospel. And I'm like, that's
Yeah,
awesome because
good.
it sucks that people have to go through a major surgery like this and then realize, oh, we need a really good professional working with us on this stuff.
100%. And good for you for having those conversations, with the dad and again, we're just in a different climate now where they're being forced to do things that they really don't have to do, but they're being told they have to do because of, again, speeding up their process to get it to a college. Where some kids aren't playing for college. Some just want to have a great high school experience. And so the reality of an injury brings that into clear focus. As when they didn't have the injury, they just don't think that's ever going to happen. So they keep going faster and faster and more without training that base. You, with your young girl that you're training, you get the chance to develop foundational and fundamental skills in a base of the movement patterns, whether it's strength movement patterns or the seven movement patterns. Now we get the opportunity to see what it really looks like. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like working with return to play girls and just really getting them back better than prior to injury. And that should be the goal. The goal shouldn't
Yeah.
just be cleared. It should be stronger, faster, healthier than before this all happened.
exactly, 100%. And I think if we're given time, we can do that. It's just many of them, even I've had some when they've gotten close. And all of a
Hmm.
sudden the parents are like, well, the coach wants him back. I'm like, nah. And then, I unfortunately I don't have the control to keep them. It's their choice.
Yeah.
And I kind of like, well, you got my number, if you need something. So
Yep. Well, you lay out the risk versus rewards to doing
yeah,
that, and then you guys make your decision. But at least as a professional, we told you the truth and what to weigh here,
that's
and
right.
that's all you can do. But Lee,
Exactly.
I could talk to you for the whole day today because this
Likewise.
was so fun, and I encourage everyone, please follow Lee. I'll post all of his socials and website in the caption below. And if you are in, is it Northport? The
Yeah.
Northport. Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're in the Northport, Florida area, please work with Lee. He is going to make
I
sure your
appreciate
athlete
you.
is developing and they're in very good hands. So, Lee, thank you so much for coming on, and I'll see everyone next time.